Inclusion is the most talked about concept in today's world, reflected in the Sustainable Development Goals. The responsibility to achieving inclusion in community development in contemporary Cameroon is in the hands of local councils. On today's edition of The Streak, we are beaming on the inclusion efforts of Nkambe Council in Dongamantu Division, Northwest Cameroon. This is The Streak. My guest is Musa Shey Nfor, Lord Mayor to Nkambe Municipality. Welcome to the program, Lord Mayor.
Thank you so much. The pleasure is mine, and we are glad to have you in Nkambe.
We are here from the Cameroon Baptist Convention Health Services within the context of a partnership that you share with the CBC Health Services. Can you talk us through a bit about this partnership, Lord Mayor?
Well, I think the most important aspect of this partnership, which we are here today talking about, is the community-based inclusive development. And like you started, inclusion for us should not be the most talked about concept, but should be the most practiced concept. And I think with the CBC HS, we have partners who are not only talking, but they are practicing. And they've also met us who are on the field. That's why you see that I joined from my field to be in this mode. I hope it doesn't disturb anything.
It's okay, Lord Mayor.
Pleasure.
Now, we just want you to talk us through your understanding of the concept community-based inclusive development, commonly known today as CBID.
I think that the cardinal points in this approach is first of all the community. And in the community, you have the actors. And if you are developing the community with the actors, you want it to be inclusive. By inclusion here, it means develop the community without leaving anyone behind. And not leaving anyone behind, especially by eliminating the barriers, which, of course, may make it a disadvantage for people with some kind of challenges, be them artificial or natural challenges. So that's all about it. That means develop an approach to development when everybody has a role to play and has a place to see. Thank you.
Lord Mayor, what are some of the efforts that your council has made within your municipality as a result of that partnership that you share with the Cameroon Baptist Convention Health Services? Let's begin it from health, to be precise.
I like it when you get to health before every other thing, because only a healthy person can get involved in the development. And whether or not you have a challenge, everybody has health issues. In the case of Nkambe Council, I want to say that we embrace health from a holistic perspective. Holistic in the sense that the health strides we're making are not only geared for people with challenges, but for the whole community. And that's what makes it really, really inclusive. First, we are into the most basic approach to health. That means the identification of those factors which at any point can contribute to health challenges. Secondly, tuning these factors to people who already are disadvantageous or have a disadvantage in terms of having other predetermined or existing challenges. So you want to limit the impact, because health challenges are impactful for everybody, but for people who already have other challenges, especially disabilities, if you don't take special care, you can have it aggravated. So in the case of Nkambe, we actually approach from two broad perspectives, as I've explained. Now, initially when we got into this partnership, it was like, what do you do to reduce the impact of health challenges, especially of people with disabilities? But as we progress, we realized that we needed to do something more. That means even preventing people getting to disability, so that even the whole impact of health problems shouldn't come. We are having, in addition to our main partner, who is the CBCHS, our partnership too with the district hospital, because the council is not a trained health practitioner. Meaning therefore that each time we go for capacity building with CBCHS, we come back and place on the local reality with our local partners who are actually the Nkambe District Hospital. And in this domain, we get into sensitization of health issues. For example, we do screening for NCDs, non-communicable diseases, such that if you already know that when somebody develops diabetes, it could get into visual impairment, and you are able to do an early diagnosis, for example, of the kind of things that can lead you to diabetes. It means you have not only prevented diabetes, but you have prevented an eventuality of disability which will come from there. If we do a campaign to identify situations of hypertension, and we know that hypertensive complications can also lead to other forms of disability, it means we definitely are handling this. If we organize sports, and we are definitely making sure that by the vital signs at the beginning of every sporting event, we're able to have our medical team talk to people, their understanding of what health challenges are. We get to a situation where we impactfully let people know how healthy living can prevent people getting into disability. But when it happens that people already have disabilities, be it visual, mobility, or all the other domains, we now have another approach. And this approach, first of all, is constant or frequent or regular checks, which means management of the disability when it's already there. You know what I was explaining was making sure we don't get there. But when we're already there, what do? We do management. And in the management phase now, regular checks, medication, and of course, boosting the morals. Because you know, when you already are depressed because of your medical situation, especially if it has led you to a disability, you need to have a good moral. So in our approach to this health, the prevention part which I've described, the management phase which I'm talking about now, but the moral boosting phase, and these are all the things that we put in the package which has to do with our approach to handling the health domain in Cameroon municipality.
You've talked at length in the domain of health. Is there anything in education?
The first thing is that I said the health aspect of it starts with education.
Education, okay.
Which means that the education here, I don't want to make the education just to be limited to formal. The education here is at the same time holistic. The ability for people to understand that inclusion today should be the most practiced concept is an educational aspect, which you must, an educational aspect maybe from a sensitization point of view. But if one must talk education as education, I will talk education in terms of what we do, especially assisting people who have challenges and who need to get into learning process by minimizing the effect of the state as far as the learning process is concerned. We have a lot of schools within our municipality which are directly or specially tailored to handle situations that have to do with people having disabilities. Thanks to the partnership with CBCHS, first of all, there are lots of workshops where teachers from these schools before the crisis were actually being trained, so that if you go to a class and you have a child who would not be able to express himself or herself like all the other children, how do you approach such a child without playing down on his capacity to move along with the rest of the people? So there's that first phase, which is the capacity building, thanks to this partnership that we have. The second part is, of course, the provision of didactics, which are contextually good for the process itself, because the capacity building of teachers will mean nothing if the didactics. These didactics could be with a special reading logistics, could be with a special writing logistics. It could even be with the environment itself, because learning is not just the discussion, that the environment itself has to be attractive in terms of learning. So in this particular domain of education, we have all what I've explained, starting from the capacity building to the logistics. But above all, to the fact that the council has put in place what you call a scholarship fund, whose most important target is about people living with disabilities, but also the vulnerable. And the context now makes it even more pertinent, because initially we focus on people with disabilities, but we are looking at a situation of conflict today, where there are people who are also internally displaced. There are minorities who unfortunately are being targeted in some other places. So we bundle all of them into the same process and make our inclusion really inclusive. Because I know that at the beginning of the process of inclusion, there was much more trying to address the issues of people with disabilities. So we have a scholarship fund, wherein at the beginning of each academic year, we look at the most challenging situation. It could be people living with children of people living with disabilities, meaning that the parents themselves don't have the means to let them have a normal learning process. It could be that the parents have the means, but the children have disabilities. It could be a combination of the two, and it could be about the minorities, it could be about people who are traumatized by the conflict situation. So our set of educational response is consistent with each identified set of parameters.
Now, you've talked a lot on education. Maybe would you just want to end in terms of livelihood? What is it that you do to empower those you've assisted health-wise, assisted in terms of education, and now you want to make them to be functional in their community?
Okay, thank you. I think for anybody who has good health and has some reasonable level of education, if you're not living, they shouldn't even be talking about you. So that's why whether we're doing the education part or the health part, we want to make sure that all of that leads to you having a livelihood that is worth mentioning. In our context here, we have also a series of things that we've been doing. First, we have graduated thanks to the partnership that we have mentioned. We've graduated away from the concept of giving out to people with disabilities, to actually assisting them to have a sustainability lifestyle, even with those disabilities. That's why when you look at it, we identify what abilities a person with a disability has, which can help him or her to remain more or less independent of actually being a nuisance to society. Because previously, you had a situation where people thought that when you have a disability, the best that is now there for you is to beg, is for people to mortgage your life and have you arrested by way of giving things to you and make you indefinitely humble to them. So in our approach today, we identified disability types, look at the best way that you can have something to do while having those challenges. Let me take a few cases. We have a case of somebody who has visual impairment. That person was never born with that situation of visual impairment. But this is somebody who also has a family. So when we identify his situation, the first thing he told us before he even ran into that situation, he had a special love for other community services like operating a grinding mill. What did we do? We did the assessment, came up and put that at his disposal. And today, instead of him bothering people, people bother him because they come over to have to look for assistance. And he's been able to educate his children. He's also become very useful to his community, because before then, people used to have to travel several kilometers to maybe get the grinding mill. The way he's located now and doing all of this, it helps. We also have situations where somebody who had been a shoe mender and was very enterprising when he had the challenges of a mobility impairment, he couldn't go to have the means again to be able to continue with that. The council stepped in and provided him. And of course, today too, he has a family that is running. We have other people who are having challenges, but they are very gifted in the business world. And we have women, for example, that through what we call a council green garden, we do produce, when we get our food stuff, they act like the small retailer. But what we do is we don't give them for free, we give them at discounted rates, sometimes 40%, that means 60% off. And that's just to encourage you that you take this. For every time you sell and you come to buy, we take off 60% of the normal cost. And the people have become today the whole chain of food security. We have other people still in the domain of livelihood, but this time around from what you call the vulnerable population and the minorities, who, by the lifestyle they had before, push them into thinking, for example, that the rural communities as a nomadic community could only live if they had the rain or grazing of animals. But today, through the livelihood approach, we also get them involved in other things different from that approach.
And that's the end of Parliament Stride on the Nkambe Council inclusion efforts. On part 2 of the program, we will focus on accessibility and universal design. That's the streak.